if I had to choose one of these cameras, the GH5 or the A7 III, which one would I choose? I would have to go with... How's it going, creators? In this video, I'm gonna be sharing my updated thoughts on the Panasonic GH5, a camera I also love, and the Sony A7 III, another camera I also love, so that if you happen to be in the market for either of these cameras here in 2020, well, I might be able to help you make the right decision. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, I'm gonna be sharing which one of these two cameras I would choose if I absolutely had to choose one or the other, which is a very difficult thing to answer. I wish I could just smush them together into one camera, but that's not the case, is it? If you're new here, my name's Connor. I'm an adventure filmmaker, and I would really appreciate it if you hit that teeny tiny little subscribe button so that you can see more videos just like this one. For the majority of the rest of this video, I'm just gonna be comparing the pros of the GH5 and the cons, of course, and the pros and cons of the Sony A7 III, just kind of comparing them back and forth for my personal style of shooting. And this is not gonna be a super tech-heavy review. When I test and review cameras, I really like to talk about them in real-world situations and scenarios. Why did I think this would be a good idea? Climbing roughly 1,500 feet, doing a little over 20 miles with my camera backpack, which weighs about, I don't know, 10 to 15 pounds with the two bodies and two lenses plus other accessories in it. And to give you some perspective, my bike weighs like 26 pounds, so backpack 15 on top of the bike, 26 pounds. That's a lot of extra weight, and I'm feeling it. Before I dive into talking about the pros of the GH5, I just want to note, I'm not going to be talking about every single feature. I'm just talking about the main ones that really separate these cameras for me. If you have any questions about any of the other features, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you. My three favorite things about the GH5 is the IBIS, the internal stabilization, the overall feel of the camera, the durability, the button layout, all that stuff, and then that amazing 4K 60 slow motion. Let me dive into that. The IBIS, the internal stabilization in the GH5 is just phenomenal. It's an absolute beast for handheld B-roll shooting. I actually rarely carry a gimbal or use one because the IBIS is so good, I don't really need one. So if you're a run and gun type of filmmaker, you're always on the move, this is awesome. Now my second favorite thing about the GH5 is the overall feel. This thing feels much more well built, I guess, and just more durable than the A7 III. I have dropped this camera many times, and for those of you who have seen my channel trailer, if you haven't, I'll link it up here somewhere. Yeah, I crashed and dropped it pretty hard, and it's still working amazing. There's only a couple small little blemishes on here for how much I've used this camera. I've absolutely beat the GH5 to pieces. I've shot in the mud, rain, dust, snow, freezing, hot, every single condition you possibly can imagine in with the GH5, and it's held up flawlessly through all of that. I just like how the buttons feel. They're just a little bit bigger and easier to navigate than the Sony, and that's super important to me when I'm running and gunning and having to change settings on the fly. And then of course the GH5, yes, has the flip out screen that the Sony does not have. Most people just talk about having the flip out screen for vlogging, which yes, is extremely nice to have, but I actually find myself using the flip out screen for setting up kind of funky, weird angles more so than using it for vlogging. For example, in this video, there were a couple shots that I simply would not have been able to get with the Sony because it doesn't have the flip out screen. Even if the shot might be possible on the A7 III without that flip out screen, it just makes it so much harder to get your settings right, your focus, and just get that shot quicker. Like I said, when you're running and gunning, anything that's gonna speed that process up is highly valued to me. And this might not be super important to a lot of people, but the GH5 has a proper HDMI port. Having the HDMI port just makes it easier to output to an external monitor because it's such a universal port. You don't have to have any weird adapters, anything like that. And it makes it possible to output 4K 60 in 10-bit to an Atomos recorder, which again, to a lot of people, that may not be a huge thing, but for me, when I'm shooting client and corporate work, those kind of specs are necessary. And then that leads me into my next pro for the GH5, which is, yes, the internal 4K 60. Now the A7 III only shoots 60 frames in 1080p, and I gotta say that 4K 60 on the GH5 just looks so good. Now, if I was just a full-time YouTuber, this wouldn't be a huge feature to me, but again, I make most of my living off of shooting video for clients, corporate work, so having that top resolution and being able to shoot it internal without a monitor is huge. Now before we get into the cons on the GH5, let me know what your favorite thing is down in the comments about this camera if you own one, or let me know what feature you're the most excited for if you're in the market for one. So by now the GH5 is sounding pretty awesome, I'm sure, but with those amazing specs and features do come a few very important cons. This is a video dominating camera. That basically means that the photography out of this does not come close to the A7 III. When shooting photos, the dynamic range just is not as good. There's not as much information in the photos to tweak with colors and whatnot in post. I like to shoot a lot of sunrises and sunsets. Doing that with the GH5 is extremely difficult. I just can't get those dreamy looking photos that I get with the A7 III. I've just struggled a lot shooting photos with the GH5 and being extra happy about the results. And then of course, low light. This is probably due to many reasons, but I'd say the main thing is that tiny micro four thirds sensor. The low light just is not as good. There's not as much information being taken in onto that sensor. So yes, the GH5 does take pretty good photos, but overall I haven't been thrilled with it. And then I don't even want to talk about this a whole lot because it's something everyone talks about the GH5, but it's the autofocus. It's not that bad with the newest update here in 2020, but I just can't trust it like I can trust the autofocus on the A7 III. Before we dive deep into the A7 III, I just want to quickly remind you to, if you are enjoying this video at all, learning something, getting value out of it, please hit that teeny tiny little subscribe button. It's my dream to be able to one day take on a little bit less client work and shift more of my focus to YouTube, making more YouTube videos. And by you hitting that little subscribe button, it's free for you and you're gonna see more of my content. That's just me being able to take it one step closer to that dream. I just love reviewing gear, getting outdoors, sharing my knowledge with you so that you guys can become better filmmakers. Like I mentioned before, if you have any questions at all, leave them down in the comments. I'll get back to you. All right, now let's chat a little bit about this here Sony A7 III. Now, the first pro and what I think is definitely the main differentiator between the GH5 and the Sony is the photos. I absolutely love shooting photos with the A7 III. I feel like it's just a little bit lighter, more nimble. I can just run around and snipe photos. Plus, the sound of this shutter, ooh, it's sick. It's got much better low light than the GH5 because of this massive full frame sensor. I can push it way farther during sunset. I can shoot for at least another 20 minutes to an hour longer after the sun goes down compared to the GH5. Like I mentioned before, just the dynamic range is better, meaning you're gonna be able to have more information in your shadows and your highlights, like the sky, than the GH5. What kind of happens to me when I shoot photos like that on the GH5, the sky just ends up being really blown out and I can't recover or pull those levels down as easily as I can with the A7 III. Which yes, you could probably replace the sky in Photoshop, but that's way too much time than I have. If I can just do as much as I can in camera, get the shot almost there, and then just do some minor tweaks, that's the style I'm going for. The A7 III just feels like a much more true hybrid camera, photo and video, whereas I really feel like the GH5 is mainly a video camera that can shoot photos if needed. Now when it comes to the cons, it's definitely video, but I want to say the video on this thing is still really good. It's just not as good as the GH5. I'm not going to dive into the exact video specs comparing the A7 III and the GH5 in this video. I have some other videos that you can watch, which I'll link, where I do dive into those a little bit more. Just know that the GH5's video features pretty much outperform the A7 III in every way. Now both of these cameras shoot great video. It really just depends on your style and what your needs are in terms of the specs that a video camera is going to offer. And real quick, if you are an A7 III shooter or you have experience using this camera, let me know in the comments what your favorite photo or video feature is. The number one thing for me, and this is personal opinion, is not having that flip out screen. It's just one of those kind of minor things, and it's probably something no one really talks about because it's not technically a spec, but I just find it slows my workflow down so much for my style of shooting. The second main con for me is that it just does not feel as durable as the GH5. I think technically this body is weatherproof and weather sealed, but these connections and little flaps that open up all your connectors just don't feel as strong or as reinforced as the GH5 ones. I'm borrowing this A7 III from a friend right now because I currently don't own one, but I can tell you it has not gotten nearly as much use as the GH5, and it kind of has more wear marks than the GH5 does. Now again, if you're someone who shoots portraits in the city or something like that, and you're not kind of constantly abusing your camera and outdoors like I do, then that's probably not a big deal at all. And the third con for me, it's not a huge one, but I don't like how the focus ring on these Sony lenses feel. I've shot with a bunch of the G Master lenses as well, which are $2,000 plus lenses, and I just don't like the way this electronic focus ring works. It's kind of hard to explain unless you've used one, but basically the faster you pull this focus ring versus how slow you do it has a difference in the ramp and actually how far you're pulling the focus, if that makes sense. So again, when you're running and gunning, getting that focus, it's not consistent, and I have a really hard time picking up that manual focus. Now, of course, when you're using autofocus, this is not an issue, and I probably should have mentioned a pro is definitely the autofocus. But when you're shooting in manual focus, which is what I'm shooting in most of the time because I shoot more video than photo, it's just a pain. So now for the question that everyone's been waiting for. If I had to choose one of these cameras, the GH5 or the A7III, which one would I choose? It's so difficult to say because every project I work on is pretty different, and that's why gear rental companies exist, because every project's different and you're constantly having a different need for different gear. But just for the fun of it, for me, someone who primarily at this time makes my living shooting video for corporate clients, for corporate companies, I would have to go with the GH5. It has not let me down yet. It's performed time and time again. I've been using it for about 2 years now pretty consistently for a lot of different client projects. And yeah, it's never froze on me. I've had the A7III freeze on me before, kind of act funky in really cold temperatures. None of that with the GH5. Now, if I was a full-time YouTuber being defined as shooting more content for myself and my own brand versus other brands, I would probably go with the A7III. And that's because it's just a more well-rounded hybrid photo video camera. There's tons of features I would miss from the GH5, especially that flip out screen, but the ability to shoot better thumbnails for my videos, be able to have a photo camera more on the fly for shooting shots for Instagram and whatnot, it would just work better for me when I was shooting content for myself. I think the better autofocus would probably override not having the flip out screen, because even though I can't see myself when I'm vlogging, I can trust that that focus is gonna nail it 99% of the time. And if I was ever recording just talking head stuff like this, where I'm sitting there talking to the camera, I can always just hook up an external monitor, put that on top, flip it towards me so I can see what I'm doing. Now, something I wanna add is if I could afford both systems, the GH5 and the A7III, which is something I've really thought about investing in for a while, I probably wouldn't go with the A7III, I'd go with the A7R3 or R4, and that's because I would be using the GH5 mainly for video and the Sony more for photo. And man, those 42 megapixel photos that come out of the A7R cameras is just insane. Before the whole coronavirus thing happened, I got to test an A7R3 on loan from Sony out in Hawaii, and it absolutely blew my mind how far I could crop in on those photos. I could shoot mostly everything really wide, and then later on in the editing, figure out exactly where I want to pinch and zoom and crop things, which is a crazy awesome freedom to have as a photographer. GH5 and the A7III are both amazing cameras that I will continue to love and use in 2020 and beyond. I don't think they're going to get outdated anytime soon, really. The next thing you should do now is, if you're interested in learning more about either of these cameras, I'll link a few of my other videos that I've done comparisons that dive a little bit more into the details and the specs between these cameras. I really do hope this video helped you if you're in the market for either one of these cameras. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, hit that tiny little subscribe button if you want to see more, leave any comments, I'll try to get right back to you, and make sure to stay safe out there, guys. Coronavirus is no joke, it's serious. If you live in an area where you're not supposed to be going outside, please don't do it. I'm so grateful and fortunate to have an area like this to keep me sane, to keep making these videos for you guys. So see you guys in the next one. Keep creating. Peace.